I stopped clapping for my wife the night the whole town stood up for her. Laura was on the hospital ballroom stage in a navy dress, one hand pressed to her chest, blinking at the lights, while the microphone gave a soft whine. My sport coat hung over the back of my chair, my salad satin touched, ranch pooling under one limped tomato. Beside my plate, ice melted in a water glass and soaked through the little paper napkin. An older man leaned close, smiling like we shared a secret. "You must be so proud of what you did for Nathan." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" His smile faltered. On stage, Laura searched the room until she found me. I lifted my hands, like I was still applauding, but they never met. Something cold opened in my chest. Nathan was 12. And suddenly, my wife's kindness had another shape. Before that night, I would have told anybody Laura and I had a good marriage, not a movie marriage. Ours was quieter than that. 15 years of coffee made the same way. Her mug with the chipped red handle. My boots by the back door, even though she hated it. The two of us passing each other in the kitchen without needing words. I ran a small electrical business out of a dented white van. Mostly lake houses and panel upgrades. Porch lights for retirees who paid in checks and zucchini bread. Laura managed the library at the elementary school, which meant she knew every child who lost a mitten and every teacher who cried in the supply room. We did not have children. For a long time, that sentence felt temporary. Then it became a room we kept the doors shut on. There had been doctors, calendars, circled in hope, Laura on the edge of the bathtub holding a test she wouldn't throw away until morning. There had been me saying, "Will be okay?" because I didn't know what else a man says when his wife is staring at nothing. Eventually we stopped trying. Then we stopped talking about trying. That was our compromise with grief. So when Laura began volunteering with the hospital's support program for seriously ill kids, I told myself it was good for her, maybe good for both of us. She came home with stories about painted ceiling tiles, purple bandages, and Nathan, a boy who loved old boats and hated being called brave. At first, Nathan was just a name on our kitchen calendar. Hospital visit, written in Laura's small blue letters every other Thursday. The calendar hung beside the refrigerator under a fish-shaped magnet from Traverse City, holding up the electric bill I kept forgetting to mail. "Long day?" it asked when she came in. "Yeah," she'd say, setting down her tote. But he smiled today. And I would nod like that was enough. Some nights she made meatloaf because she knew I liked the burnt-edge pieces. We ate at the little oak table while the dryer thumped in the basement, one sneaker or towel making the house shudder every few seconds. She told me about a fifth grader using a peanut butter sandwich as a bookmark. I told her about crawling through insulation and mouse droppings. Normal things, married things. But after the fundraiser, those memories changed shape. The Thursday visits looked less like kindness and more like protected appointments. The casserole she packed for a family at the hospital suddenly felt heavy. Even the softness in her voice when she said Nathan's name felt like a door closing between us. I hated myself for thinking that. I hated her a little for making me think it. That night, we drove home along the dark lake road without the radio. Laura held her award plaque in her lap. "You okay?" she asked. "Just tired," I said, gripping the wheel. Outside, the lake was black and flat, and every warm window looked like someone keeping watch. Laura didn't come to bed right away after the fundraiser. I heard her in the kitchen, moving carefully. A cabinet clicked shut. The junk drawer slid open with that dry wooden scrape it'd been meaning to fix for years. Then, it closed too fast. I stood in the hallway in my socks, one hand against the wall, listening to my own house like I was a stranger in it. When I stepped into the kitchen, Laura turned with a glass of water in her hand. "You scared me," she said. "Sorry." Her makeup was gone, but her eyes were still bright. Maybe from the lights at the banquet, maybe from crying. On the counter, her black purse sat unzipped beside the award plaque, which leaned against the toaster like it didn't belong to us either. "You coming up?" I asked. "In a minute." She took a sip. "I just need to put a few things away." A plain white envelope lay on the table. Thick. One corner bent. She saw me notice it. For half a second, Neither of us moved. Then she picked it up, opened the drawer beside the stove, and slid it under the takeout menus. It was nothing. A woman putting away an envelope in her own kitchen. But my chest tightened like a hand had closed around it. Upstairs, she showered. Steam drifted under the bathroom door, carrying the sharp peppermint smell of the shampoo she used when she had a headache. I sat on the edge of the bed with one shoe half untied, the lace hanging from my fingers. I did not open the envelope. I need to say that, because I wanted to. I went back downstairs and stood by that drawer like a thief. But I kept my hand at my side. Then, I saw a key beside the coffee can, half hidden under a grocery receipt. Not ours. Not the house. Not my van. Not her school keys. It was silver. New looking. On a paper tag reinforced with a little metal ring. Maple Unit 6. The block letters were black. Blunt. Nothing like Laura's careful handwriting. I picked it up and held it until the teeth left a mark in my thumb. When the shower shut off, I put it back exactly where it had been. For days, that key followed me. Into crawl spaces, onto ladders, through dinner. Laura would ask if I wanted more coffee. And did he only Maple Unit 6? That Saturday, I went looking for an orange extension cord in the front closet. It was buried behind winter boots, a bag of dead light bulbs, and a shoebox I didn't recognize. Dust coated the lid. When I tugged the cord, the box slid down and tipped open. Cards spilled out. Bright paper. Crooked stickers. Marker lines pressed so hard they had bled through. On top was a birthday card with a cartoon sailboat. I opened it before shame could stop me. The handwriting was big and uneven. To my almost mom. Laura, thank you for not leaving when I get scared. Nathan, I sat back on my heels. The orange cord twisted around my wrist. Dust floated in the hallway light. Upstairs, Laura hummed while making the bed. Soft and ordinary. I read the words again. Almost mom. And something inside me stopped making excuses. I put the card back in the shoebox like it was evidence at a crime scene. For the rest of that Saturday, I moved through the house with my hands, doing one thing in my mind, doing another. I coiled the orange extension cord. I changed the furnace filter. I rinsed the same coffee mug twice, standing at the sink while the water ran cold over my fingers. Laura came downstairs in jeans and one of my old sweatshirts, her hair damp at the ends. You okay? She asked. Fine. She watched me a beat too long. You seem quiet. Just tired. That was the first lie I told her out loud. Not the first lie between us. Maybe? But the first one I felt harden on my tongue. After that, ordinary things started looking staged. Her phone was always face down. When it buzzed during dinner, she waited before touching it. Eyes on her plate like silence could make me deaf. The kitchen calendar had more Thursdays circled than I remembered. Hospital visit. Drop-off. Maple. On Tuesday night. We were half watching a renovation show when her phone lit up on the arm of the couch. She glanced at it. I need to take this. Who is it? Hospital. She went out to the back porch and pulled the sliding door almost shut. Cold spring air slipped into the living room. I stayed there with the remote in my hand, the TV flashing blue over the rug. At first I heard only the low murmur of her voice. Then, clear enough to cut through me, she said, No. He doesn't know. My chest tightened. Through the glass, I could see her outline under the porch light, one arm folded across her stomach. Phone pressed hard to her ear. A moth threw itself again and again at the bulb. I'm not ready to tell him, she said. A pause. I know. If Mark finds out this way. My name sounded strange in her mouth, like it belonged to someone outside our house. When she came back in, her cheeks were pink from the cold. Everything all right? I asked. She nodded too fast. Yeah, just scheduling stuff. For Thursday? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine. Yes, I wanted to say. I found the key. I found the card. I heard you. But another part of me, the uglier part, wanted more before I gave her a chance to explain it away. So, I looked back at the television and said, Okay. That week, I became a man I wouldn't have respected 6 months earlier. I noticed the mileage on her car. I noticed when she bought gas on the east side of town instead of near the school. On Thursday afternoons, I found excuses to finish jobs early, a missing part, a delayed inspection, a headache I never mentioned until I needed it. Laura never looked guilty the way people do in movies. She came home with tired eyes, grocery bags cutting reed lines into her fingers, and a softness that made me angrier because it gave me nothing solid to hate. One evening, she made chicken soup from scratch, carrots cut to thick, pepper floating on top. She set a bowl in front of me and kissed the crown of my head. "You've been carrying something," she said. I stared at the steam between us. "So have you." Her hand stayed on my shoulder for 1 second. Maybe 2. Then she let go. Later, I stood in the dark kitchen and watched her through the window over the sink. She was on the porch again, wrapped in a gray cardigan, speaking so quietly I had to hold my breath to hear. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. My fingers curled around the counter's edge. Then she said, "He deserves the truth." For 1 second, hope hurt worse than suspicion. Maybe she was going to tell me. Maybe there was still a door back to us. Then her voice broke. "But if he hates me after, he'll understand." I stood there with my reflection laid over hers in the glass. And for the first time in 15 years, I wondered how much of my marriage had been happening while I was paying attention. The next Thursday, I took a half day and told my foreman I had a dentist appointment. There was no dentist. I sat in my van behind the old pharmacy on Harbor Street, a gas station coffee cooling in the cup holder, my hands on the wheel like I was waiting for somebody to tell me I was still a decent man. Laura's school let out at 3:10. At 3:26. Her blue Subaru passed the pharmacy. I let 2 cars get between us before I pulled out. The lake was gray, flat as sheet metal under a low November sky. Laura drove past our turn, past the grocery store, past the church where we had stood 15 years earlier and promised not to keep score. Then she turned onto Maple. My stomach dropped. Small apartment buildings lined the street, brick and vinyl, with tired gutters and little squares of grass gone brown. I basketball hoop leaned over a cracked parking lot. Laura parked outside a 2-story building with green doors. I pulled into the laundromat across the street. Its neon OPEN sign flickered over an old man folding towels from a black garbage bag. Maple Unit 6. Laura got out with 2 canvas grocery bags and a white paper sack from the pharmacy. She paused beside her car. Not like a woman meeting a lover, more like someone bracing herself before walking into bad news. That should have mattered to me. It didn't. Not enough. A boy came out onto the 2nd floor walkway before she reached the stairs. Thin shoulders, ball cap low, pajama pants under a winter coat. He moved carefully, one hand sliding along the railing. When he saw Laura, his whole face changed. She climbed the stairs, and he folded into her arms. Laura dropped the bags right there on the concrete so she could hold them with both hands. I looked away. My reflection in the van window looked older than I felt. Sawdust clung to my jacket cuff. Small burn marks out on my thumb from a wire that had sparked the week before. Normal things. Honest things. Things I knew how to fix. When I looked back, a man had opened the green door behind the boy. He was broad through the chest, but worn around the eyes. He hugged Laura too, one arm around her shoulders, his chin briefly touching the top of her head. "There it is," I whispered. The words fogged the windshield. Laura wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. The man said something. She nodded. Then all 3 disappeared into Unit 6, and the green door closed. I sat there 20 minutes. I could have gone home. I could have asked my wife a direct question like a grown man. Instead, I got out. The cold hit my face as I crossed the street with my cap low. At the bottom of the stairs, crooked mailboxes hung on the wall, most labeled with masking tape. Unit 6 had 2 names, i.e., Harlan, D. Voss. No Laura. No secret last name. No proof that fit cleanly into the ugly story I had built. A small pair of red sneakers sat near the stairwell. One lace missing. Through the thin wall came a cough. Then Laura's muffled voice, gentle as a hand on a forehead. Just try 3 bites. Okay? Then we'll see. The boy answered, too softly for me to hear. On the bulletin board, between pizza coupons and a parking notice, was a flyer for a pediatric cancer support group at Street Annis. Someone had circled Thursdays in blue pen. My throat tightened. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the mailboxes. Then I hated myself for needing it. Back in the van, I waited until Laura came out almost an hour later. The man walked her to the stairs, keeping his hands in his coat pockets. The boy stood in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket covered with little planets. Laura blew him a kiss. He pretended to catch it and tuck it into his coat pocket. That hurt more than the hug. I followed her home in the first cold drops of rain. She drove the speed limit, used her blinker, stopped for a yellow light she could have made. By the time she pulled into our driveway, I was parked 2 houses down, staring at my hands. I had gone looking for betrayal. What I found was worse in a way I called it name, yet a room full of tenderness I had not been invited into. That night, Laura asked if I wanted soup warmed up. I said no. She stood in the living room doorway, still in her work clothes, rain darkening the shoulders of her sweater. One wet strand of hair clung to her cheek. You sure? I ate late. It was a lie. My stomach had been empty since noon, but hunger felt easier than sitting across from her while mine replayed Nathan catching her kiss in his pocket. After she went upstairs, the television kept talking to itself. I watched the hallway instead. At 10:22, the shower started. That was when I moved. I told myself I was only looking for the envelope I had seen her hide. I opened the kitchen junk drawer, then the drawer with stamps and grocery coupons. Nothing. I checked the basket by the phone, under school newsletters, behind a stack of takeout menus. 8 trout magnets, lit off the fridge and seal act against the floor. I froze. Upstairs, water kept running. In the little desk by the back window, I found a plain manila folder tucked behind tax receipts. No label. Inside was a copy of a cashier's check. $10,000. Payable to Lakeside Pediatric Care Fund. The date was Monday. For a second, the kitchen seemed to tilt. That was our roof money. The shingles on the north side had started curling, and I had spent 2 Sundays pricing materials, convincing myself we could survive one more Michigan winter if we were careful. Behind the check was a note on cream-colored paper. Laura, I don't know how to thank you for what you're doing. He sleeps better when he knows you're coming. I know what you gave up. Daniel. The name sat there like a hand on my chest. Not a neighbor. Not someone from school. Daniel, a man who wrote to my wife like they shared something sacred. I read the note twice, waiting for it to become harmless. I know what you gave up. The shower shut off. I shoved the papers back, but one receipt slipped to the floor. I picked it up and felt my throat close. A jewelry repair shop in Traverse City. Paid in cash. Item description resisting. Engraving removal. Gold band. A gold band. I pictured Laura's hand on Danielle's back. I pictured Nathan in his planet blanket. I pictured some other life beside ours, neat and hidden, with a Maple Street Cayenne Thursday circled in blue. Mark? Laura called softly. I slid the folder back and stood in the kitchen holding the trout magnet like I had come in for that. She came down in her robe, face washed clean. No makeup, no armor. What was that noise? This fell. I opened my palm. She took the magnet from me. Her fingers brushed mine. Warm from the shower. We've had this since Mackinac. I remember. Her small smile faded. You're scaring me lately. I almost laughed. Because she still thought fear was happening to her. Am I? Yes, she said. For 1 second. I wanted to throw the folder on the table. The check. The note. The ring receipt. I wanted to ask who Daniel was, what she had given up, and why our roof mattered less than a secret I wasn't allowed to name. Instead, I gripped the back of a chair. Am tired? Laura looked as if I had struck her with something too quiet to leave a mark. Okay, She turned off the kitchen light before she went upstairs. I stayed in the dark, listening to water drip from the gutters and slow, separate ticks. By morning, I had decided the folder was proof. Not of what, exactly, but proof that my wife had built it or in our life, and I was standing on the wrong side of it. I made it until Thursday. Laura stood at the kitchen counter spreading peanut butter on toast. She was going to eat. Her hair was clipped up with that silver clip, missing one tooth. The folder sat under my newspaper, where I had put it before she came downstairs. Hospital today? I asked. Her hand froze. For a little while, she said. I slid the folder onto the table. Paper on wood. A small sound. Still, her face changed like something had broken in the room. I opened it to the check copy. The receipt. The note in uneven kid handwriting. Thank you for not giving up on me. Who is Daniel Voss? Laura gripped the counter. Her wedding ring licked once against the laminate. Mark. Is he the man at Maple? The one who hugged you like he had the right? She closed her eyes. I laughed. But there was nothing funny in it. Don't look wounded because I found out you've been lying. I have been lying, she whispered. The refrigerator hummed behind me. Rain ticked against the kitchen window. I had waited for a confession, thinking it would make me feel steady. Instead, my legs felt hollow. How long? Please sit down. How long, Laura? Almost 2 years. I looked up at the ceiling it patched after the bathroom leak. At the light fixture I kept promising to replace. Our ordinary house just stood there around us, pretending ordinary things were still true. 2 years, I said. You had a key. You wrote checks. You took porch calls like a teenager. That boy calls you almost mom. Her face crumpled then. Not with guilt, but with pain so sharp it almost stopped me. Almost. Is Nathan yours? No. Was he supposed to be? She stared at me, and I knew I had struck something buried. Answer me. She turned to the sink, twisted the faucet on, then off again without washing a dish. Her fingers shook. Years ago, she said, before we stopped trying. I filled out papers, foster certification, medical respite care. I went to meetings. The words didn't fit the ugly story I had built. So I reached for anger, because it was the only tool I had. Without me? I was going to ask you, but you didn't. No, her voice broke, because every time I brought up children, you disappeared somewhere I couldn't follow. He froze in my neck. So you replaced me with a sick kidney man named Daniel? She flinched. Don't make it dirty, just because Yuri hurt. That shut me up. On the windowsill, her half-dead basil plant leaned toward the gray light. One brown leaf curled against the glass. Daniel is Nathan's foster father, she said. Erin is his mother. They're drowning. Appointments, bills, fear. I help because I can. With money we needed. With money from my aunt's account. The separate one. And the ring receipt? For Erin. She ponders last winter for gas cards. I bought it back. I wanted not to believe her. Disbelief felt safer. Belief meant I had been cruel. So I found one more blade. And when you said I didn't know? When you said you weren't ready to tell me? Laura looked older than she had that morning. Nathan asked if I would take him if Daniel couldn't keep doing it. Not forever. Not officially. Just if things got worse. My mouth went dry. And you said yes. I said I couldn't answer alone. But, in your heart, you already had. Silence. That silence was the answer. I backed away from the table. You built a whole room in your life and locked me outside. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Quiet and steady. I was afraid you'd tear it down. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. But I remembered the nights after the miscarriages, how I fixed broken outlets all over town and left our own house dark. I remembered her on the bathroom floor with a towel in her lap, while I stood in the hall asking if she needed anything. Hoping she'd say no. I picked up my truck keys. Where are you going? She whispered. I don't know. At the back door. My hand closed around the cold brass knob. I followed you. I said. She went still. To Maple. I saw Daniel. I saw Nathan. Her face emptied into sadness. I opened the door. Rain blew against my shirt. Behind me, she said. Then you know he's just a boy. I stepped outside anyway, because if I stayed, I would have to admit she was right. I drove until the rain thinned and the lake appeared black between the houses. At the old turnout past the marina, I pulled over and killed the engine. Laura and I used to park there when we were newly married, drinking gas station coffee on the hood of my truck, talking like wanting a family badly enough would make one arrive. My phone buzzed. Laura. Then a voicemail. I didn't play it. I sat with both hands on the wheel, staring at a ham wound cut near my thumb from a panel box I'd fixed that morning. My knuckles looked old. The next call came from a number I didn't know. I answered because some bitter part of me thought it might be Daniel. Mark? A woman said. This is Drive. Henson. Laura gave me your number years ago, as an emergency contact. She just called me in distress. I'm not discussing my marriage with a stranger. I understand, she said. I was your fertility counselor at North Bay Clinic. The truck seemed to shrink around me. I remembered beige walls, a broken coffee machine, a fake ficus, women filling out forms with shaking hands while men studied the floor. Laura came to me after your last loss. Doctor, Henson said, alone. That one word changed the air. She said you weren't sleeping. You were working 12-hour days. Every time she mentioned adoption or fostering, you went quiet. I didn't say no. No, she said. You didn't say anything. Across the road, a boat trailer sat crooked in the weeds, one reed reflector catching the gray light. She asked me if it was betrayal to love a child she held and keep. There was another child in the hospital program then. Before Nathan, she wanted to help, but she was afraid it would break you. I memory opened Laura in our hallway holding a flyer about weekend foster respite. Me saying, can we not do this tonight? Before going to the garage until she went to bed. I had not forgotten. I had buried it. What about the ring? I asked, my voice rough. Nathan's mother sold her wedding band last winter to cover gas and prescriptions. Laura bought it back through a repair shop. The engraving was removed because the band was damaged. She meant to return it when he could bear to receive it. The life I had invented, secret husband, hidden vows, my wife belonging somewhere else collapsed inside me. And Daniel? Nathan's foster father, now his guardian. He and his wife have been trying to keep that boy near treatment without losing their home. Rain tapped the roof, light and careful. I saw Daniel's bent shoulders again. Not a rival. A tired father leaning on the woman who had shown up with groceries, paperwork, quarters for laundry, and pieces of herself she had never brought home. Laura should have told you. Dr. Henson said. You have every right to be hurt, but if you only look for the lie, you'll miss the wound underneath it. After we hung up, I played Laura's voicemail. For 3 seconds, only breathing. Then her voice came, small and broken. I wanted to tell you after the second miscarriage. The doctor said carrying again could be dangerous for me. I signed the form because I was scared, and because you were already disappearing. I let you think we just stopped trying. I thought if I said it out loud, you'd hate me for ending the dream. I pressed my fist to my mouth. I met Nathan 2 years later, she whispered. He was 10, bald from treatment, mad at everybody. He asked why I kept coming back. I told him because somebody should. That was all at first. Then it became more. The message ended with Laura crying my name like she didn't expect me to answer. I sat until the windshield fogged over. Then I started the truck and turned toward Maple Street. Not home, because I finally understood I hadn't been chasing the truth. It'd been chasing shadows my fear had made. Maple Street looked smaller when I was hiding across from it. Unit 6 had a porch light with a dead moth trapped inside the glass. I sat in the truck, hands on the wheel, rehearsing grown man words that sounded weak even before I said them. Then I got out. Daniel answered in sweatpants, a hospital bracelet still around his wrist. His eyes narrowed. I'm not here to start anything, I said. Behind him, a TV murmured. A spoon clinked against a bowl. Laura's not here, he said. I know. I swallowed. I owe you an apology. Aaron too. Nathan. If he knows who I am. Daniel's face shifted. Not soft exactly, but less guarded. He knows. Laura talks about you. That hit harder than anger. She does? Says you can fix anything with wires. Says you hates cilantro. Says you once drove for hours for a used bookcase because it matched her grandmother's. Rainwater darkened the toes of my boots. I had made myself the betrayed man in my head. Meanwhile, she had still been describing me kindly. A tired woman's voice called, "Daniel? It's okay," he said. Then to me, "Come in, if you mean it." I almost said no. No was easy. No kept me from seeing the damage up close. But I stepped inside. The apartment smelled like damp coats, cereal, and the faint sharpness of hospital sanitizer. Children's slippers sat by the door. One tipped over. On the coffee table were insurance papers, an open cereal box, and a wooden model boat with dried glue shining along the seams. Nathan sat under a blue blanket, and a cat pulled low. He was smaller than I'd imagined and more watchful than any 12-year-old should have to be. "You're Mark," he said. "I am Laura's Mark." My throat tightened. "Yeah, I guess I am." Erin sat at the kitchen table in scrubs, both hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. Daniel stayed near the counter, arms folded. "I'm sorry," I said. I got scared and built a whole ugly story out of pieces I didn't understand. Then I treated everybody like they'd done something wrong. No one rescued me from the silence. I deserved that. Nathan picked at a bead of glue on the boat. "Laura cried today." "I know," I said quietly. "She doesn't cry at the hospital. She probably saves it." He nodded, as if that made sense. I crouched beside the coffee table, careful not to crowd him. The boat's mast leaned to one side, stubborn and fragile. "This is good work," I said. "It's crooked. Most things are before you brace them right." For the first time, Nathan really looked at me. I thought of Laura crying years ago on our bathroom floor, and me, standing in the hallway, mistaking distance for mercy. "If it's okay," I said, "I could bring a small clamp next time. Not to take over, just to help." Nathan looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Erin. Her eyes filled, but she didn't turn away. "Next time?" Nathan asked. I nodded, and for once I didn't let fear speak first. "Yeah," I said, "if you'll have me." We didn't fix 15 years in one night. The counselor gave us a notebook and warned us not to turn it into a courtroom. Laura wrote on the first page, things I was afraid to say. I wrote beneath it, things I punished you for not saying. We kept it on the coffee table beside the remote. My therapy handouts, and a bowl of loose screws from my work pants. Every Sunday after dinner, we sat there for 20 minutes. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we only looked at the calendar. At the red circles around appointments, on hospital visits. Once Laura whispered, "I decided you were broken to hear the truth," I said. "And I decided pain gave me permission to be cruel." Neither of us called that forgiveness. Not yet. A week later, I carried my small screwdriver set into Nathan's room. First snow streaked past the parking lot lights outside. Nathan watched me open the cracked reading lamp beside his bed. "You can really fix it?" he asked. "I can try," I said. "That's different." Laura sat by the window, hands folded in plain sight. Daniel slept in a chair. Erin's shoes were tucked under the bed. When the bulb burned, yellow light spilled over Nathan's wooden boat and the crooked mast it helped brace. He smiled like he was trying to hide it. On the doctor home, Laura reached across the console. I took her hand. It didn't erase the lies, or what it'd done with my fear. But it was warm. And I finally understood love didn't have to mean possession. Sometimes it meant telling the truth before silence learned how to hurt someone for you.